Okay, so hey guys, and welcome back to another Axel 72 video, and in today's video I'm going to be giving my prediction for the Ty Mitchell versus Gabriel Rosado fight. And so if you are new around here and you haven't yet subscribed, please do so, like the video if you do indeed like the video, and feel free to join the Patreon as well. You can request any kind of combat sporting related content, including Misfits or any influencer kind of boxing that you're into, and I will try my best to get out there for you guys. I appreciate all the support in which I've had with it so far, and also if you are carrying on with some New Year's resolutions that you are doing, I believe code AXEL10 will still get you 10% off at grindactivekinetics.com to get yourself some fresh new gym wear to be keeping fit in the new year. I think that code will still work. I hope it does. Links will be in the description for both of them. I appreciate all your support with both of them. Let's get straight into this one though. And of course, with Misfits cards, I do my predictions a little bit differently. Instead of just deeply kind of analysing the main event, I kind of go through the entire card. I give predictions for all of them. It's not a very big card, this one. There's been much bigger Misfits cards, but nonetheless, I'm going to go through the entire card, give my thoughts on each one. I will probably start off with not the best of analysis, and that's just because of the lack of knowledge of certain fighters and individuals, and some of them it's their first time having boxing fights and things like that, so again, there's not really too much footage to analyze and things like that either. So it's a little bit of a base prediction for some of them, but a little bit less kind of in depth. But I feel like you don't necessarily need to always be as in depth with Misfits. With Misfits, my predictions are normally pretty good, so hopefully we'll carry on that run. But yeah, let's get straight into this one. I'm going to start off with the main event, which is of course Ty Mitchell versus Gabriel Rosado, and it's a decent fight, one which was surprising for me to see, and I didn't expect Ty Mitchell, to be fighting Rosado. I actually still thought he was retired, to be fair. I know that he retired back in 2023, but, he's decided to come out of retirement in 2025 and have two kind of lower level fights. He fought Vaughn Alexander, who's a bit of a well-known journeyman, and another guy, and he managed to pick up 2 wins there. And again, he's back in the winning column now. I don't know what brought him back to professional boxing. Again, for a lot of fighters, they go into Misfits or exhibition fights or things like that. He's gone back into the professional kind of side of things, and this is still, I believe, technically a professional boxing fight, and it's against somebody who is trying to class themselves as a professional boxer in the Misfits world in Ty Mitchell. So it's an interesting fight. I think it's going to be a tough fight for Rosado and for Mitchell. It's going to be intriguing to see what Rosado's got left in him now that he's 40 years old. I think Mitchell's 35. It's hard to work out and to get actual proof of age with Mitchell, just nowhere really seems to say it, but I think he's 35 and Rosado's 40 to 41, and so they're both on the older side of things to an extent. I don't think Rosado is at this level fully shot, but actually at the same time you can make that argument that we don't really know which level Ty Mitchell's at. With Rosado, he's, obviously fought some of the best of the best. Just to list some of the names in which he has fought in, what was the heights of his professional career. He's fought Jamel Charlo, he fought Golovkin, he fought Melikuziev, who he KO'd the first time brutally and then, did lose in the rematch, but that was, a very dramatic first KO. He's fought Munguia, Mosley Jr., Angelo Angulo, Peter Quillen, who was for the world title, that was, and he's fought David Lemieux, he's fought former world champion Daniel Jacobs, some real big names. And he really kind of came onto the scene when he went up against Golovkin and showed a lot of heart. And in all of them fights against all of them top names, he's never been properly knocked out. I mean, he's been stopped often due to his eye getting cut, and again, that would be interesting to see if there's any damage that gets caused to the eye in this fight. But he's been dropped, but he's never been fully knocked out. And again, when you're listing the likes of names like Golovkin, like your Munguias, like your David Lemieux, and your Charlos as well, there's some big names there. And to say that you've never actually been properly knocked out by any of them is pretty sensational, to be honest. I mean, he's, like I say, fought some of the best. He's been around with some of the best. He hasn't been able to beat the majority of them. I'll give that, and I'll say that. He's only, really had that highlight moment against Melikuziev in the first fight where, that was a dramatic moment. But obviously he's had that career for a journeyman. He was a journeyman, even though, he was a bit of a fringe kind of world level journeyman. He gained a lot of respect by fans, just like say from fighting everybody, from showing his toughness. It's similar to what we're seeing now with something like a Derevianchenko. He's kind of going around and just fighting all the top names and proving his toughness against all of them, even though he's not actually been able to get the win against the majority of them. It's the same kind of thing as Rosado, and the fans, they recognize Rosado. Rosado is a known name. You would assume that he has been a world champion from the way that he is, held by boxing fans and how popular he is. And we still see him on the Inside Ring magazine show that they do each week, analyzing fights. He's been a commentator on the Zone shows and things like that. This isn't something that normally happens to fighters who have 17 losses on their record and has never won a world title. Again, it's impressive. It's very impressive what he was able to achieve in his career, even though he had the amount of losses in which he did. Again, it was just, very impressive, and he always showed his toughness, and he never backed down and never didn't take a challenge from anybody. And now he's kind of doing the same here. And I suppose the more I think about it, the more I talk about, like I say, that toughness and that fighting anybody, it's no real surprise that he's come back to boxing. He's probably only got a few kind of bigger fights left, and I'm glad that Misfits have picked him up because he deserves to have a big payday and a big opportunity to, go into what is a different world. And if he wins this fight, then he has a whole realm of possibilities of who he could face, who he could, perhaps beat, some big MMA names, some big, names in general, just some big names could be around with some big money as well. And for a 40-year-old who's done all that he's done in his career and still wants to be in the sport, I'm glad that he's getting this opportunity to be able to fight, and like I say, I'd imagine still get good money. And, Ty Mitchell, he's coming off his fight with Sean Hemphill, which was, a solid performance from Mitchell. It wasn't amazing. He won pretty much the first 6 rounds pretty comfortably, and then it went a little bit off for him. I think he just really was quite gassed out, and Hemphill started putting it on him more and more. And, by the end of the fight, it was looking quite rough and he looked very tired. And obviously that was the first time I believe that he's gone the full 10-round distance. And, it was obvious, you could tell. Rosado obviously is older, but he has gone that full length distance quite a few times and he showed he could. Obviously, when he was showing that he could, that was, a few years ago when he was at his heights and his best doing that. But, Mitchell, it was a good performance for him to be able to beat Hemphill. Hemphill before that was coming off a win against Mark Jeffers, who was undefeated at a time, and it was a good fight. I still don't know what Mitchell's limit is. He showed up well against Idris Virgo, but Idris Virgo I never really thought too much of. And then, again, I was impressed to an extent with his performance last time out. But again, in them later rounds, it did show quite a lot of vulnerabilities. And I think defensively, he's still got quite a lot of gaps where he could really get caught. It makes it an interesting fight. Rosado, I don't know what level he's at this point in his career. Again, if this was a Rosado at his best, I think he would have definitely beaten Ty Mitchell. Mitchell, is this him at the best of his career? Obviously, he had that long hiatus where he went to prison and everything like that, so he missed them kind of best years of his career, arguably. But is this now the best Ty Mitchell we're going to get? Does that beat a Rosado who's 40? Possibly. Does that beat a Rosado who was maybe, 10 years ago, 15 years ago? I don't think so. So who do I think is going to win now? I'm going to go with Gabriel Rosado to get a TKO victory in round, 4, 3, maybe into the later rounds. I don't know how many rounds this is going. I probably should have tried to, research that, but it just didn't really say anywhere how many rounds it was going. But I think if it goes into the later rounds, it could be interesting to see who's got the best gas tank. Rosado's always been incredibly tough. Mitchell does hit hard, but he hits very widely and very wildly and quite reckless. And, I think he leaves a lot of defensive gaps. Rosado was always quite good with his head movement, but I don't think how much he's going to use that much now, saying he's 40. I just don't think he's going to have that much speed. But the power is always the last thing to go, of course. Rosado, he can be tight defensively with his guard as well. I think he's going to leave less gaps, be defensively harder to hit than Hemphill, just because Hemphill was squared up, stood right in front of you. I think Rosado's going to hold his shape a little bit better and not be directly in front of you. I think, like I say, I think Rosado's going to land a big shot and win. Whether it be early in the fight when Mitchell's maybe landing his work and trying to show off a little bit, wouldn't surprise me. Or if it goes later into the fight, again, I'm not too sure how many rounds it is. If it is 10 rounds, then I think, again, Rosado, he can get the win, in my opinion. And I think he will. I think he is, like I say, shown that he can go the distance, and he's come back with a couple of good wins against, lower level opponents. But still, I think he's going to be able to get the win in this one. And I think it's going to be quite dramatic in the stoppage in which I think he's going to get. I think Mitchell, he's got a bad stoppage defeat coming to him, I believe. Not due to anything that he's done, not talking about that. I mean, due to the way that he fights, being so open when he fights. And I think it's going to happen in this one. And then who he can go on to fight next, Rosado. I mean, this is a big win for him. And again, at 40 years of age, it's a big moment. It's an opportunity to build upon a Misfits career and then to start to make money. You can then start looking at the likes of maybe a Slim or a Gib, maybe somebody like that. That could be a possibility. Or you go down a bit more of a different route, which is away from Misfits, but still kind of a crossover influencer boxer type thing. Tommy Fury. I don't know what's going on with his career. Nate Diaz, that could be a good fight. Jorge Masvidal, that could be a good fight. There's some good names there, which I'm sure is going to bring a paycheck, and I'm sure people knowing the Rosado name, which is always such a benefit, being able to know, the fans will know your name. I think he's going to be able to build upon something, and I don't know who he's going to be able to beat and how far he'll be able to go with it, but I think he's going to win this one and then start something from there, and I'll be happy about it. He's 40. He's not, in the late 40s or 50s or anything like that. He's not that old. So, he's going to be boxing professionally either way. So we might as well try and get him in matchups which are going to be exciting for the fans instead of just journeyman type opponents, which really aren't going to, give much to the fans. Because Rosado's always going to be entertainment. And I believe, it's going to be the case in this fight as well. Then, talking about the other fights in this card, co-main event is Walid Sharks versus Argentinian King. Sharks is coming off a loss to Fox the G, where he got pretty much just outboxed the entire fight, just walked onto a lot of punishment from Fox the G and just couldn't really do much, but he put on the pressure. I still don't think he's a shot fighter at all, but, I think Fox the G is actually a pretty decent fighter and could be a pro fighter, but he's obviously going to be making more money in Misfits, but Walid Shark still has a bit left, and he's still a good enough fighter, and if he can get you in the pocket and not just get walked onto continuously, he can land and he can punish, and he does hit relatively hard. Argentinian King is coming off a win against Small Spartan J, which was a very kind of comfortable performance, really, to an extent. I mean, Small Spartan J tried to put it on a little bit at times, and King seemed a little bit worried, but for the most part, he was boxing, he was jabbing, he wasn't really turning up the tempo much at all. It was a very one-dimensional, one-pace type of fight from what I saw, and I just think, it wasn't an amazing performance. He's had a loss prior, I believe it was to Yudi Gang. I'm not entirely sure if I'm right with that, but he's had a loss prior when he had a boxing fight, a technical boxing fight, but this probably won't be that with the pressure that Walid Sharks is going to put on. I'm going to go with a Walid Sharks win. I'm not going to say how, because I actually don't know. It could be a stoppage, it could be a decision, but I'm going to say that Sharks' pressure is going to be nicer on the eyes for the judges, at least, if it does go to the decision, and he's going to keep walking him down and keep putting the pressure on, and I don't think King throws as well and as strong as that of Fox G, and his timing isn't as good, and if he's not going to be allowed that space to box, then he's probably going to get backed up onto the ropes, and I think he's going to be able to, Walid Sharks is going to be able to back him up, and I feel like Small Spartan J, if he'd have just walked him down a little bit more and tried to just accept a couple jabs and then just put on that pressure, he actually could have won that fight, but he just didn't really do that, and he allowed King to kind of just box, and, King was boxing well, and when he did turn it up with, another shot to follow off the jab, it was nice, but it wasn't enough, in my opinion, to be able to deal with somebody like Walid, who, like I say, is just going to put it on, and he's going to have a point to prove now that he's coming off the loss to a Fox to G. So yeah, I'm going to go with a Walid Sharks win. Moving on to the heavyweight matchup, which is Tempo Arts versus Jordan Banjo. This is an interesting one. Tempo Arts is, now returned fully into boxing, and that's, nice to see. I think the Misfits heavyweight boxing scene is better with him in it because he is one of the better heavyweight boxers. There's really not that many good ones, but he is a good one. And I mean, the heavyweight division is quite exciting in the Misfits scene at the moment. Just coming off, not that long ago, the whole Chase Demur, Andrew Tate thing, that brought a bit of excitement to it. And I mean, Tempo Arts arguably should be the Misfits champion. Obviously, he vacated the belt by choice and said that he wasn't really too involved in, enjoying boxing as much. That could definitely play a factor into these types of fights. He might not be up for this fight as much, or he might not be too bothered about this fight that much. Again, we'll have to wait and see, if he's now, had this change of heart and everything like that. And, he's had a couple fights since vacating the belt. So, maybe now he's fully back invested in it again. You would like to hope so. But, obviously if he's not, it will probably get shown at some point. I don't know if Jordan Banjo is going to be the guy to show it, but we will have to wait and see. But since Tempo Arts' return, he managed to get a good win last time out in a, what was a 1v1v1v1 fight where it was like a tag team, but they were all against each other. It was a bit of a weird dynamic and it made for a bit of a weird fight. But Tempo Arts, if it wasn't that dynamic, I believe would have knocked out 2 out of the 3 opponents in Godson and Big Tobes. I think he would have knocked out both of them. I think they're both awful heavyweights, so you can't really read too much into it, but he does carry good power to catch the fighters who, aren't used to taking big shots and aren't used to, fighting too much just yet. And Jordan Banjo isn't really used to fighting too much just yet. Tempo Arts dominated the, 1v1v1v1, and to add 3, names to his resume is going to be good for him. But at the same time, it's not really going to be showing any kind of gas tank or anything like that. So that could always be a problem, if the fight does go later on with Tempo Arts, but he's always, not afraid to commit, even though, of course, he throws from quite wide and wild as well. Jordan Banjo didn't really show too much in the way of, recklessness in his Misfits debut. He fought Will Anderson, I think his name was. It was, a Love Island guy, and he was basically just looking pretty comfortable. Whenever he landed, he had success, but he just got to a point in the 3rd or 4th round when he was boxing at a mid-range, he was holding his shape all right, and he was jabbing all right, and, any time that he landed, like I say, he was having success, but he just kind of stopped throwing. He looked extremely comfortable. He looked like he was trying to box quite nonchalantly. I don't know if it was just a fear of gas tank. I don't know if it was a, trying to show off to an extent. I don't know if he was, scared of what could come back. I'm not too sure, but he was having success. He was boxing all right. I mean, it was a bit, still novice-y and stuff like that, but it was okay. And like I say, he was having more success and he looked like he could go that full distance okay. I would have liked to have seen him turn up the tempo a bit more, and actually I feel like he could have gotten his opponent out of there, but he did, smother himself a bit and things like that whenever he got a bit too close. I'm going to go with Tempo Arts win for this one. I think he's going to knock out Banjo. Tempo Arts, credit to him, he's a young guy, and to be able to knock out these grown men is still impressive nonetheless. And I mean, I just think, like I say, if Jordan Banjo just has moments where he's not really doing anything, it's, Tempo Arts isn't just going to allow him to do that. He's going to pounce on him, he's going to attack him, he's going to try and hurt him, and he's probably going to have success whilst doing so, because I think, Banjo's going to freeze, he's not going to know what to do, and he's not going to have been hit by anybody, putting that much intent into their punches. And I think, like I say, Arts is going to get a victory in my opinion. Moving on to the 2 female fights now. So Carla Jade versus Pearl Gonzalez is the first one I'm going to be talking about. And this is a good scrap. Carla Jade coming off, a good win. It was against Taylor Sterling, I think her name was. She was a BKFC fighter, former one, just like Pearl Gonzalez is. But Jade was able to use her jab for the most part again, and kind of awkwardly use her jab in her range to just be able to stick it out just enough to disrupt opponents from wanting to commit. And that's kind of been the case for the majority of the fights in which she's had. She's just stuck out her jab enough to be able to, discourage her opponents from coming in, because it is just a bit of a disrupting type of punch. It's not really throwing with tremendous amounts of intent, but it's very disruptive. I still think there's lots of defensive vulnerabilities and things like that in Jade's game, but it makes for a little bit more of a boxing technique than some of the female fighters in which we have seen in Misfits over the time. Pearl Gonzalez is coming off a win on Misfits against Ty Emery, which was a bit of a war of a fight, to be fair. Credit to Gonzalez really just biting down on the gum shield and just letting it all go in there. But again, it's another one of them styles where it's just going to be slowly walking towards you. I feel like Jade's just going to be able to do the exact same thing, which is just poking out her jab and having success. She hasn't fought anybody who is going to have that kind of similar style to her, and if she ever does, I think it could make for an interesting fight. Or if somebody can get through that jab and to keep coming forwards, possibly Gonzalez. She's shown that she can show grit and determination and toughness. She might be able to push through the jab enough to be able to just get her work off. But I think Carla Jade's going to win this one again just by point scoring with the jab. I think she'll probably catch Gonzalez will probably catch Jade at points, but I think Jade is still just going to keep that jab out enough and consistently enough with the other, followed up straight shot, which would be nice if she really paired together well and brought back a bit nicer as well. And defensively didn't just kind of stick her head back and just lean back whenever she's trying to get out of any bad position. But I still, like I say, I think Jade's going to win that one. And then to speak about the final fight, which is actually the first fight of the night, it is Jade Jones versus Egypt Kris. And this is the one which is a bit harder to call as a fight because both of these are making their boxing debut. Jade Jones is a former two-time Olympic gold medalist Taekwondo fighter from UK, and like I say, it's very impressive the fact that she was able to win gold twice in Taekwondo. Taekwondo obviously is a lot of kicking and it shows a lot of agility, and it was very impressive what she was able to do to win gold twice in the Rio Olympics and the London 2012 Olympics. But that was a while ago. That was 10 years ago, the Rio Olympics. So again, what's really been happening since then, it seems just a couple years ago Jade Jones made the decision, or at least a year ago made the decision to switch over to boxing, and now she's doing that. And will she have developed and changed things enough from the kickboxing time to this? We'll have to wait and see. When she's Taekwondo kickboxing, Taekwondo fighting, I mean not kickboxing, fighting, she will be having, of course, the head guard on and things like that. Obviously, that's completely different to fighting boxing. This is going to be no head guards and things like that as well. So she won't have taken, she will have taken probably strong kicks before, but she won't have taken a strong punch. At least she would have taken some sort of something. And I think that's what's going to add to, help her in this fight when she's fighting somebody like Egypt Kris, who hasn't had a boxing fight. She's been rumoured to fight a few people. She was calling out Krishan Rock, who's I think Blueface's wife or girlfriend. I'm not really too sure, but she was calling out her for a while. She makes music, Egypt Kris. She's been training for a little bit. She hasn't had a fight yet, I don't think. She looks alright on pad work, but nothing too crazy. Again, same with Jade Jones. I'm going to go over Jade Jones' win just through, like I say, combat sporting experience. I think her footwork will be in a good spot. I would like to see her footwork. Again, Taekwondo athletes and same with kickboxing athletes, they do seem to have quite a particular wide stance, which would be interesting to see if that carries over to boxing. Hopefully not. Hopefully it's a nice kind of solid base. But I still think it could be a bit of a scrap at times. I don't think there's going to be, again, a tremendous amount of technique in it, but I would like to see a little bit from Jade Jones. And if she does look good, she will, probably get moved along straight into a world title shot. So possibly she could be making a good run there. And of course, it's a good chance as well for her to make money. But yeah, I just think obviously she has much more combat sporting related experience than that of Egypt Kris. But yeah, that is it for today's video. Hope you did enjoy. Like the video if you did indeed like the video, subscribe if you're new, and thanks for watching.